Hi, this is Theo from ParkerBlocks.com. Today I'm going to review the Strathmore Watercolor Postcards. This was sent to me by Strathmore in January 2016 this year. Today is already July, so I am finally getting to reviewing it. There are 15 sheets in this particular pad and they are all glue bound on this edge here. The size is 4 by 6 inches. The paper weight is 300 GSM. It's cold press paper and this is made in USA. I think that is all about the information there is on the cover. One thing to know about Strathmore is they like to categorize their grade of paper into different series, like the 100 series, 200, 300, 400, 500. So that is missing from this postcard. Anyway, series 100 is the student grade quality and 500 series is the best quality. So for today's review, I'm going to be testing these postcards with different mediums. These are the drawing tools I will be using today. This is a Pentel brush pen with black ink, Copic markers, Pentel color brush, pencil, another color brush, a fountain pen with noodleless ink inside. Noodleless ink is supposed to be waterproof. I have with me some dry color pencils as well. These are the Polycolor from Koh-i-Noor. I will use some water-soluble color pencils too. This is the Derwent Intense. And of course, I will be using watercolors since these are actually watercolor postcards. Let me start with my fountain pen first with noodleless ink. So after the ink is dry, I will apply watercolor to test the colors on this paper. Let's start drawing. So the paper size for this postcard is 4 by 6 inches. It's not very big. You cannot draw a lot of detail with this postcard, so you have to plan your drawing carefully. Alright, I'll wait for this to dry before I add some watercolor to it. Meanwhile, let's try the color pencils. Let me just tear this off first. Oh, by the way, this is the back of the postcard. So we have the usual lines where you can write the name, Strathmore logo here, and you can place the stamps here. Alright, let me just wait for this to dry. Actually, I think I shall just use my magic pencils. I think they are easier to use because when it comes to line art, I don't want to switch between too many color pencils. So these are very easy to use. And these are dry pencils, they do not dissolve in water. It works quite well with color pencil, it's quite smooth. The paper is able to get the color pencil, and I think if you shade it hard, you can actually go right into the tooth of the paper. And this paper is not as rough compared to other cold press papers, so you actually do not see a lot of rough texture on it, so it's quite good for color pencils as well. I am not actually pressing very hard, I'm just actually shading very lightly, so the color pencil is still able to feel the tooth of the paper. Let's use watercolor for this sketch first. I'm just going to apply it like this. The paper handles watercolor quite nicely. There is no mention of whether or not there is any cotton content in this paper, so I shall just assume that there is no cotton in it. It's because usually when watercolor they have cotton content, manufacturers like to market that. They like to point it out because cotton makes the paper more durable. I'm using yellow ochre for the ground. This color pencil is doesn't actually absorb water, so you can see some of it repelling the water. So if you want to use pencils with watercolor, you do have to actually test them out first. Some of the paper is repelling the water around this area here. Let me wait for this to dry and meanwhile I'll work on this drawing first. For this sketch I will be using yellow ochre as well for the skin tone with some cool red. This time I will try not to use too much water. Perhaps some orange, bright orange hair with a little bit of red. Just paint this orange directly onto the paper and then drop in some of the red. I'm holding the paper so that the paint can flow downwards. Let's wait for this to dry as well and see how it looks like later on. So some parts of the paper you can see that it repels water, and here there's some sort of background because just now I was painting with the watercolor paper flat on the surface. Now it has some of the watercolor has actually run upwards. The paper is 300 GSM. It's quite thick. It doesn't buckle that much, but because it's a small piece of paper, it doesn't really buckle that much compared to a larger piece of paper. The effects of buckling is not that obvious. I'm just going to draw very quickly. And now let's use Copic markers. I have with me a Warm 9, Warm 5, W5, 3, 1, and this is a 7. So let me use the lighter tone first for the skin tone. I'll use the chisel edge. So the watercolor paper handles markers very well, which is not surprising. Let's try the brush pen. I just want to make some areas darker, so this is the brush pen. Maybe the shoes I'll make them black instead of just a dark warm gray. Maybe some shadow definition here. It's very difficult to see how the brush pen works on this paper, so I'm just going to write some stuff here. So this is a dancer, so let's try something. Dancer, D-A-N. So you can see the watercolor paper texture starting to show with when you use this brush pen. Let me use a wetter brush. The ink flow for my Pentel brush pen is not very good, the pocket brush pen. This is the Pentel color brush pen. At least with this particular brush pen, at least I can squeeze to make it give out more ink. So this is much easier to control the ink flow. If you draw very fast, of course you're going to get the textured lines, but if you go very slowly, the edges, they are quite sharp. So you do need to go a bit slower, if not you're going to see all this texture. So this is marker with Pentel color brush with black ink. The effect is very nice. The paper is actually quite smooth when you use marker on it. With markers, I like to check whether or not there is bleed through, and in this case there is no bleed through, although you can see a very slight impression of the marker ink from the other side, but it's not really a problem. There's no bleed through at all. So it handles marker and liquid ink very well. This is the earlier watercolor sketch. The colors, they retain vibrancy even when dry, so this paper is actually quite good for watercolor. And there's some granulation here because of the paper texture, very slight granulation. If you want more granulation, you probably have to use more granulating paint, but from what I can see here, I can say that the colors, they are quite vibrant if you don't mix them too much. This is the color pencil with watercolor sketch earlier on. Also, the colors are just as what I would expect them to be. This is some sort of orange. You can see the paper of the texture, the white of the paper showing through. If you have a sharper pencil, this is a sharper pencil. Let's try and color on the paper again. So with a sharper pencil, we have less white of the paper showing through. Let me go back to the Derwent Inktense and do some shading here and mix it with some red. Start with the orange. Works very nicely. It dissolves very nicely, and you can see the bright color. Almost all the pigment from the pencil has been dissolved. That is great. So I don't see any more of the pencil. This is the red color. Sometimes I like to wet the paper first and then draw with the color pencil. So let me wet the paper first like this and draw something with the color pencils. Just perhaps write some words. So this is Derwent. So you can use this to draw on wet paper. But some of the pigment, you can see it starts to feather along the edges. So you do have to be a bit careful. But it's really quite fun to just draw on wet paper. I wonder how durable the paper is, whether or not it can take additional layers of watercolor that well. So let me try and overlay some of this foliage here. This is a second layer. Even though there's no mention of the cotton content, I think it should be able to handle perhaps 3 layers. This is the second layer, so maybe 3 to 4 layers. Lastly, let's see how well this watercolor paper is when it comes to wet on wet effect. I'm using a Sharpie marker to draw a box here, and I will wet this box with water before I put in paint to let it mix around on the paper. So let me tilt this paper around so that I can see the water. As I go over the surface with the brush a few times, I can still say that the watercolor paper, the surface is quite durable. Alright, now let's charge in some red paint. So you can see the paint starting to flow. This is red paint, and perhaps some purple, some orange, some additional orange color. This is, I'm not sure if this is cobalt blue or ultramarine. It looks like cobalt blue. So let me just tilt the paper like this and push it down. Let me collect all the excess water here. So now that this has dried, you can see the colors, the transition is quite beautiful. This watercolor paper is good for wet on wet techniques as well. And you can see some heavy granulation for the cobalt blue, and it's quite evident on this watercolor paper texture. So this is quite good quality watercolor paper for watercolor purpose, or if you want to use pen and ink, you can do so as well. The lines, they appear very sharp on the paper. And for markers, it has no problem with markers as well. No bleed through markers. I think they blend quite nicely too. And just now I used liquid ink, no problem with that as well. If you're using brush pen, if you draw very fast, then you are going to see the textured brush strokes. But if you go slowly, you will get very sharp edges. And what else? Oh yeah, color pencils. This paper is not meant for color pencil drawings, but you can still use color pencils for line art. That's all for my video review today. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comment section below. I will also post a link to my text review in case there are any updates. You can check out the text review. And also do let me know in the comment section how you actually use them if you have these Strathmore watercolor postcards. Yeah, that's all. See you in the next video. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so for more art product reviews, sketching tips and tutorials. Bye!